This is the Coach and AK Experience with me, Anthony K, and Coach Hugh Jackson. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Hey, welcome everybody to the Coach and AK Experience. I'm Anthony K. That is not Hugh Jackson. This week we got Coach Cam filling in. Coach Jackson's feeling a little bit under the weather. Coach, man, I appreciate you stepping in. How you doing?
AK, we got the man bun 2.0. New year, new me, right?
I'm trying to hide that. I can't go out anywhere to get a haircut. We're on lockdown.
So yours is an essential PPE man, but I thought you was rocking out and flipping it.
You know what? I watch Coach. He's on I Am Athlete with Brandon Marshall and those guys. And I'm watching Brandon Marshall. I'm like, you know what? That's not a bad look. So I'm trying it out. We'll see how it goes.
I Am Athlete may be like the steal of the year. I found it maybe around Christmas time, so maybe about 2 months ago. That is the best podcast on YouTube right now.
I'm going to go with we're number two. I'll give them that. I'll say they're number one. We're number two.
Well, I mean, former players.
Former players. It's the best one. Yeah. So Coach is on that one. Been a couple of times. Obviously, Chad Ochocinco / Johnson. That's his guy. That's his former player. So talking about his tequila brand. Check out Grand Leyenda Tequila if you haven't already. So he's not feeling good today. So like I said, thanks for stepping in. We're going to jump right in we're going to go through some basketball, some football. We're going to talk about some coaches, NFL and NCAA. Kind of that's how we'll end things off. But I'm going to start with my team, or at least my home team, because my team, everybody knows my team's the Lakers. But my home team, Toronto, you can see the shirt that I stole from my son right behind me there. VanVleet went off tonight for the Raptors against the Magic. Apparently he missed playing in Orlando from the bubble because my man was, as they say when I lived in Arizona, El Fuego. He was on fire. 54 points, 11 of 14 shooting, 74% from the field. Do you remember anyone doing that efficiently? Like, we've seen guys score 50. That efficient?
Yeah, so the 74% part to me is the part that sticks out, because I think that, you look at all of these metrics and numbers that have come in the last 10 years into the game that validate players and their efficiency. It's shooting percentage, right? So it's shooting percentage and assist turnover ratio that you can mold into like 15 other stats. But 74%, I mean, that's as a guy who had to watch, the Rockets over the last dozen years, 7-8 years with, so obviously an efficient score, but like last year with Westbrook, you just look at like the efficiency is night and day. And so it's like, that is exactly what any team needs to win.
So you brought up the Rockets, as you always find a way to do. I know you gave me a hard time. You gave me a hard time because I picked them not to make the playoffs at my preseason predictions.
I gave you a hard time. No, you gave.
Well, maybe I gave you a hard time because I was looking pretty good, but they made a couple of moves, right? And bringing in Oladipo, we didn't know how John Wall, Cousins, how all that was going to work. I want to start with Christian Wood. Can you tell me about Christian Wood? Because I know nothing about Christian Wood, and he's someone that needs to be talked about.
Christian Wood, I think, is not going to make he's going to be everybody's all-star snub because he doesn't have the name cachet. But he is, his style of play and his story is one of those Houston, just get it out of the mud types. And so I think it's, his fourth or fifth team in 3 or 4 years or something like that. He took this really the long man's journey, to the NBA. I think he bounced out of the NBA into either the G League or international back over. And so, he's one of those guys who has a game, and you can just tell he's passionate every single night, which is amazing and refreshing to see as a fan and as a player guy, because I think there's nothing more frustrating than watching a guy get paid and watch his play diminish. And he got paid, and his play is it's growing exponentially.
He's been the surprise for me. And you heard, I think there was a clip where LeBron's like, hey, watch out for that guy, right? He recognizes game, right? He understands. but to the casual fan, you might not really know what Christian Wood brings to the table. The other move I like was Oladipo. They're betting their chances on three guys in Wall coming off an injury, Oladipo coming off an injury, Cousins, who's kind of been really injured the last few years. All the talent in the world, all three of them, right? Do you think? How are you seeing them? Obviously the chemistry, they got to kind of connect a little bit because they haven't played together at all. As you're watching them, are you seeing it like things starting to gel? Is it promising for the rest of the season?
Yeah, so it really is, and I think that what I would compare the cohesion or the locker room maturity of this team to is like Kobe's second run with Paul Gasol. So it's like we're going to bet on the guy with, yes, maybe some risk associated to him as far as his time in the league, injuries. Just he's not a fresh kid, but the maturity. So here's the thing, right? So with Harden on our roster, and I think that I'm not dumping on the guy, just calling it what it is. There was always this concern of what's going to within the city, like within the culture of being a Rockets fan, what's going to happen after this fill in the blank. So is he going to come back from the bubble 300 pounds? He turned out in great shape going into the bubble, right? But starting the season, how is he off of All-Star break? How is he is your best player going to be ready to play? And so while I'd say that overall we took maybe a half a notch of a talent piece down. So I think overall the chemistry of the team or the makeup of the team talent-wise balances out because it wasn't very consistent. It's more spread out. Sure, a person again with that type of explosive offense, you've got to say you're taking a half a notch down because you lose that rocket power. But ultimately, there is this feeling of, man, we do as a city miss a veteran team, right? So we're not worried about guys missing curfew or guys missing film stuff, all the kind of knick-knack stuff that will kind of add up because those are the beginnings of a corrosive culture and environment. And so, it does feel good knowing that your varsity team is going to be playing on Friday night and instead of having to worry about, who's going to suit up, who feels like playing defense. So yeah, no, I think we're just a, kind of nose to the grindstone type of city. So we definitely enjoy, the way these guys are coming together.
Yeah, because look, Harden of the bunch, Harden's by far the best player, but now it's probably a better team, right? Which, hey, that's what wins game. Like you need a star player, don't get me wrong, but I see that. I see that too. And we see the up and downs of what's happening with the Nets, right? Offensively, they look fantastic. Defensively, they look just as bad as they do good on offense. So we're gonna switch gears into football. So you do some work with the Texans, and obviously the biggest name out there, is Deshaun Watson. Will he stay in Houston? Will he be traded? Right? If I'm Houston, obviously you're doing everything in your power, new GM, new coach, kind of new system. You're going to do everything you can and say everything you can to Deshaun and say, hey, this is the reasons you should stay, right? You rarely get an elite superstar franchise quarterback. Those guys don't grow on trees, right? He's arguably as talented as Patrick Mahomes. He just is not in the same type of systems, right? Mahomes is lucky. He's talented, but he's lucky to be in a place with Andy Reid and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and just the weapons are endless in Kansas City. Deshaun had that a little bit with Hopkins, but they traded him away. And so now, what is your take? Kind of, what are you hearing about Watson? Is it something that there's a commitment to try and keep him? Or is now the asking price, and we'll get to the Matthew Stafford trade in a minute, is the asking price now too high because of that bar that Goff Stafford trade set?
Yeah, so here's my take on it. I had a chance to actually spend some time with him over the summer, and he's just an A+ guy. So I think that the way that certain people depart in cities like Houston, in Toronto, like you look at the way that you guys receive T-Mac coming back and Vince Carter and those guys, right? So I think that there are cities with strong enough sports cultures to where we understand that we have a unicorn, and I think the city wants that unicorn to be around as long as possible. But even if it doesn't work, like he's always going to be welcomed here, like no matter what. And so, yeah, I think having just the ability to spend a bit of time with him this summer, you feel good about him making a great decision. is what I say, right? And so not, an emotional decision or not a knee-jerk decision or not whatever. I mean, just and I think at the end of the day, like I said, I think that he's just a fun guy to root for. I mean, I think he's one of those. So there are people who are easy not to like. He's very easy to like.
Everything I've heard from people who've come into contact with him is that, and that's the other part, right? You have this super talented guy who's also a good guy. You don't hear the stories of him being a bad guy, and even more, right? If you're the Texans, you want to keep good character, talented guys. Like that's your dream. You meant unicorn is probably it's the best way to describe it. You want to keep those guys. So if he were to get traded, so obviously, ideally, he stays in Houston, obviously.
Right.
There's been some reports of teams that are kind of in that conversation. Miami comes up a lot. You've had guys come out, and of course, I'm going to draw a blank on who's been saying it, but a couple guys said, hey, he'd be a good fit with the Bears, which obviously makes me super excited because I've been saying for years, right, that Trubisky, they missed out, right? You know this. Watson coming out of college, right? If you remember, they were calling him the Michael Jordan of quarterbacks. Right. You're Chicago. You draft the Michael Jordan of quarterbacks. It just made sense. They didn't, so they could correct something now. The price tag might be too high. If you kind of seeing Watson, knowing him a little bit, where do you think football-wise, right, it would make the most sense for him to be?
Houston.
Other than Houston. I mean, that's what I said.
That's really tough to answer, dude. I mean, I think that, I don't know. I haven't, we talk about like affirmations and like being intentional. I haven't thought of him playing in anything other than battle still, you know what I mean, red and white. And so I don't know. I mean, I think that you look at the schematics and like the way that Flores was able to put Tua in a position to be successful. I mean, I think that situation is very attractive. But of the three, you look at the team with the best receiver, and that's Chicago. I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I'm a huge Allen Robinson fan. The other two, so Coach Jackson kind of gave up two names. This was last week before, obviously, the trade of Matthew Stafford for Goff. And he had said, if I'm the 49ers, right, I'm doing everything I can to get him in San Francisco. If not, look out for the Rams, because he kind of he was the first one I heard that said Goff is not going to be a Ram at the end of, very quickly in the offseason. And I had some people say, Coach is nuts. What do you mean Goff's? And look what happened. He got traded for maybe the second best quarterback that was available in Matthew Stafford. So, right, San Francisco makes some sense too, because if you're the Texans, you don't want him in the AFC either, right? You want him as far away from you as possible. You don't want him playing any chance of him playing you if you have any aspirations, I guess, of in the playoffs. So, all right, I'll leave that alone. We'll say let's hope that he stays in Houston. Right. But I do want to play a little QB carousel. So I'm going to throw out a quarterback. There was a list. ESPN put out a list of like 15 quarterbacks. I'm going to give you throw out 3 or 4 names. You tell me if they're going to stay or they're going to be gone at the start of next season. Because this is a name that's popped up a couple times now. Kirk Cousins stays with the Vikings.
Yeah, I think so.
Dak Prescott in your home state.
Yeah, he's about to get paid. Yeah, he's going to stay.
Cowboys pay him and keep him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the right move. I think if anything, him getting hurt last season,
they're in bed together now,
showed how bad or how good he is, right? How many of their faults he was covering up for. So yeah, I'm paying him too. Hopefully he's back and he's healthy. Carson Wentz.
Saskatchewan Rough.
Don't sleep on my Rough Rider.
Not in the NFL. Not a starter. I don't think he's a starter. I don't trust goofy quarterbacks. I was going to save that take for later, but we'll come back. I don't trust goofy quarterbacks.
Okay. We'll come back to it because this is the last one. Because it's one that I, as a Bears fan, said this last offseason, and I'm going to say it again. Right? Listen, assuming we don't land Watson. Okay. Jameis Winston.
Okay. I did not see that one coming. I don't think he'll be with the Saints. No.
Yeah. Well, do you think Drew Brees comes back? Because there was talk, right?
Yeah.
He was kind of talking the farewell tour. He's going to retire, but he's got unfinished business, right? When you lose a game where you throw 3 picks, I feel like he wants to play again, right?
He's got unfinished business, and I think that there was really only 1 or 2 games where his age caught up to him, and the NFC Championship was was it NFC Conference or Division Championship was that game. But I mean, he's in the same boat with Aaron Rodgers, and so my thing on Aaron Rodgers is, if anybody has been unemployed and for any amount of time, you look at your buddy who's had a job for the same job for 20 years, and they're like, "Hey, just figure it out." It's like, well, wait, you haven't been unemployed for a very long time, right? So, like, the Packers have not been quarterback unemployed for a very long time. So, you don't even want to get in the unemployment line. You keep that quarterback as long as you can.
So I wasn't going to ask you about this, but since you brought up the Packers, Aaron Rodgers is asking for a new contract reportedly. Is this their opportunity to trade him and move on, or do they re him up?
I think you pay him, you trade this Jordan kid, and you apologize.
I don't know. I don't know. Do you apologize or do you keep him? Because he played like he had something to prove this year, and I think a lot of that had to do with them drafting Love, right? I feel that way. So he stays. Drew Brees stays. You mentioned the Packers. They've had a quarterback for a long time, and this is actually what I thought of when you brought up the Packers. For the last, I believe it was since I believe it was 1990 something. There was a thing today that came out. They've had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers for the past it's like 40 years, but they've only had two Super Bowl wins.
Mm-hmm.
Is that underachieving?
Successful. No, that's
successful. Yeah.
So if you take the last 30 years that they've had those 2 quarterbacks, the Patriots, the Giants, and somebody else has had 10 to 12 of those, right? So I mean, 3 teams. So let's see. The Patriots have had 6? The Giants have had 2 or 3. The Peyton Manning had 2. So that's almost half of the Super Bowls gobbled up with 3 or 4 quarterbacks, right? So that's So
I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it from 30 years. You've had 2 superstar quarterbacks, and I guess I traded in for 2 Super Bowls. I guess if we go back to '85, we've been to 2, won 1, lost 1, and there's a lot of teams who obviously would trade that. All right. I just when you see a super, I guess the bar is so high because you look at a Tom Brady and you think, wow, all those Super Bowl appearances, he's 6 rings in, going for his, is it going for 6 or going for 7th this year? And then you see guys like who are great. I feel like it does hurt their legacy because he's been so successful. Because when you look at a Drew Brees with 1, Aaron Rodgers with 1, like all these guys with 1, nowhere near on the same level. Eli Manning has 2. I know that was more defense and some other things, but 1 seems like a disappointment. But yeah, I haven't thought about it. It's been kind of the same. I think there was a stat where Tom Brady 20 years and he's been to 10 Super Bowls.
Right.
That's nuts. That's nuts.
So Tom Brady's been to 10. Peyton Manning's been to 3 or 4 again in the AFC.
Right.
So call it 3. Eli Manning's been to 3 again. That's more than half right there, and so that's half of the Super Bowls occupied.
Right.
And so some of it I think is kind of, So I really enjoy. I shouldn't even say this as a Rockets fan, but I really enjoy Karl Malone's play, right? And so especially like his pre-Jack, like not skinny Karl, not like He-Man Karl,
right,
like they kind of in between. And it was one of those like he's never going to get the flowers, and not just the whole Jordan Kobe thing, just the power forwards in the game at that time, right? And so you look at Tim Duncan, you look at Charles Barkley, you look at what's the last one? There's one more big power forward in the 90s. My name fails me. But the point I'm making is like, you've got to be able to identify talent independently. And I think that's where our comparison culture we are now, it kind of, so the conversation 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago was, should Phillip Rivers be a consideration for Hall of Fame, which the kind of consensus was no. But, it's like, yeah, look at how much better and Aaron Rodgers is than a person who may or may not be in the Hall of Fame. And so it's just, the Packers are well put together, and they've always been talented. There's only 1 or 2 seasons in the last 10 years where they just weren't skill-wise talented to compete. They're always talented.
Yeah. Since you brought up Phillip Rivers, I'll tell you, I was one that said, I think, all right, so it's twofold. Because one, I think there's too many people in every Hall of Fame that are undeserving, in the sense that I hold my Hall of Fame to a high standard. Like, you need to be the best of the best. And if you're not even, the best in your era, how can you be in the Hall of Fame? However, that's my own opinion. Based on who's in the Hall of Fame, statistically, he's 5th all time in yards. He's ahead of Dan Marino, who's right behind him at 6th. He's 5th all time in touchdowns. Ahead of number 6, Dan Marino. So statistically, and who else is in the Hall, he is a Hall of Famer. I get the knock is playoff success, Super Bowls, but Dan Marino doesn't have a Super Bowl either. Now, if I'm picking a quarterback, Dan Marino or Phillip Rivers, I'm taking Dan Marino 10 times out of 10. But, you can't let that kind of subjectiveness, I think, fall into it. It's, hey, does he have the numbers? He has the numbers. Does he have the wins? He has the wins. Or he doesn't have the Super Bowls? Okay, well, is that a prerequisite to be in the Hall? Well, no, because there's tons of guys who haven't won a Super Bowl that are in the Hall. So that's why I said that whether I want him there or feel he's deserving based on who's in there now, he's in.
So here's a coin toss that may flip you either side, right? So there's only 2. I think I saw the stat. There's only 2 quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame without a Super Bowl: Dan Marino and Houston's Warren Moon, right? And so, as an Oilers fan, I remember those teams were good. They weren't elite talent great. So then you look at Phillip Rivers and you say, wait a minute. So in your prime, you had LT, you had Antonio Gates. I mean, so you think about like Antonio Gates redesigned the tight end position. And, Mario Schottenheimer and Cam Cameron offenses like that, those were Super Bowl caliber rosters for sure.
Yeah, and it's not like you had a shoddy defense, right?
From a health zone.
Yeah, you had Junior Seau on the other side. Like they had teams, they had talented teams, and that's definitely
Quentin Jammer, and that's right.
Yeah,
Sean Merriman.
They definitely had. That is a knock on him, 100%. You brought up Warren Moon. There's an argument that Warren Moon shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because a lot of his numbers were, you mentioned Saskatchewan earlier, were up in the CFL. Do you think his NFL career, and I know it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which means CFL counts, but based on his NFL career, do you think Warren Moon is warranted to be in the Hall?
Yeah, without a question. I mean, I think it's 2 case studies you look at. You look at Satchel Paige, and so again, look at what he was able to do post his physical pinnacle and still make an impact. But then you look at Kurt Warner, right? So if you look at Kurt Warner's career, and if he played 8 years in the league, you cut that down to like 3. You cut that down to like 5 or 6, and to have that type of production, the same way that Kurt Warner is a slam dunk, obviously with much better talented rosters and offensive schematic that is maybe now with the Rams humming the way they should, is maybe the only comparable as far as tempo, talent, and caliber and dynamic plays. I think it's with Saints obviously, right? But as far as his tempo and speed, right now, So for me, you do have to put into consideration the resources provided and you also have to put into consideration, the framework. And so, yeah, I mean, I do. I'm not saying that because I'm a Houston guy, but I mean, the dude just put up numbers, flat out numbers.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I had to ask. So you brought up goofy quarterbacks. So tell me about, explain what you mean. One, by goofy quarterback. Give me a couple examples. And not trusting them. I'm cool. I don't trust anybody goofy, but why not? Why not goofy quarterbacks?
So here's what I mean by goofy. I don't mean popular. I don't mean the Archie Bunker, like leather jacket, like cool, not the cool kid. Like goofy and cool kid, not the same thing. Excuse me. Like, I don't know that Tom Brady is cool, but he's not goofy. Right. So like what I mean by goofy is like what's the kid? Mark Sanchez,
Mark Sanchez,
running into the guard's butt. That's goofy, right? Like getting out
with a butt fumble.
Yeah, like getting into the game and realizing your shoes are on the wrong thing. Like that's goofy, right? So what I mean by that is, like, if we're watching film and and you're leading the film session as quarterback, if you have, there's a command you have to have. And so it's not about cool, it's not about suave. I mean, Eli Manning is
uncool,
very
right.
but he's not goofy,
right?
He's not goofy. And so yeah, so I don't we can go down a list. I don't trust. I think there's only 10 real quarterbacks, not real, but there's only 10 quarterbacks where it's like, okay, he's that guy. The rest of them are just gas, man. There's only a few. There's only a few.
I've never had anyone kind of put it that way before, but it makes sense. I see what I get what you're saying. It's that. And so why do you think Carson Wentz is goofy?
Because Carson Wentz is goofy. One, because I feel like, as stoic as you must be to be a successful quarterback, with his injury, with his off and on, success. I mean, he was plug and play with the Eagles for years, and you let a nobody's favorite kid. They got the boot from Bama that draft stock didn't sustain in Oklahoma the way he should. That the Eagles got, probably could have gotten the third round, but he Houston guy, right? Jalen Hurts, but he's that dude, and so so Nick Foles is goofy, right? So Wentz, there was no alpha over your shoulder as a beta, right? But when an alpha got in the room, you lost your cool and you became uncouth, and so it's like, yeah, I don't trust. Nick Foles, Austin guy, goofy quarterback.
Yeah.
Trubisky, goofy quarterback. And so what I mean by that is, again, not demeanor. I mean, Trubisky and Josh Allen, there's no difference. Josh Allen has command.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I get it. No, all right. So one of the things we talk about a lot on the show is, obviously, we talk football, and we talk a lot about kind of what's going on, be it in the NFL, in the world, when it comes to kind of social injustice, awareness, what's going on. And the last couple of weeks, Coach Jackson, has been very passionate when speaking about what's going on with NFL head coaches. And this week, what we're planning on talking about, and I'd like to talk about it with you, is NFL head coaches. 4 out of 32 are minorities, 2 of which are Black, 1 which is Latin, 1 which is Lebanese, which Coach, has been very vocal about that one. But considered minorities, there's 4 out of 32. In NCAA, in the FBS, 14 out of 130. 70% of the players are minorities. Right. When you hear numbers like that, as a coach, as a football player, as a Black man in America, how does that strike you? Is there disappointment? Is it just like, do you feel, well, that's just the way it is? Do you feel like everybody needs to kind of say something? Because we're not very vocal about it. We are a little bit here and there, but what's the first thing kind of comes to your mind when you hear those numbers?
Well, the first thing is I want these guys to win, right? And so there is a actress, Issa Rae, who is made known by the TV show Insecure, and she has this quote. And I think she's at the Grammys or Oscars, and she said, "I want everybody black to win." Right, and so it's like there's so few. We're so deeply underrepresented that you look at a city like Houston. For all the turmoil that we've had in the last 6 weeks with all of our teams, like I'm really excited. We have a black head coach for the Rockets. We have a black head coach for the Texans. I want these guys to win, and so there is almost this counterintuitive, from the outside looking in, crab in a barrel perspective that I like to unpack. So, like when you look at salaries for the Rockets, I remember when they were in the hiring process. I'm like, man, I love for this guy to get a job. I think Sam Cassell, former Rocket, was in consideration, and a couple of other black guys. And my concern instantly was, I want this guy to get a job, but I'm not sure if I want him to have this job. Not that I want him in Houston, but you look at a guy like Silas, if he would have had a cantankerous locker room with an angry Westbrook, with a disgruntled, out of shape Harden, and whoever else.
No one's successful there, right?
You're not going to be, and will you get another shot? Right. And so, obviously, typically when first time jobs come up, they typically are not the best destination. There's a couple of chinks in the armor that has to get fixed, but you almost want it to be a ship that's not too sunk in too deep for you to be able to resurrect. Because the last thing is, okay, we hired him and look what he did. He wasn't able to win. Well, like Vince Lombardi couldn't win with that roster. This roster isn't good. You got to look at this thing, right?
Because just to jump in, I think that's the other part that we've talked about, is that in the 100-year history of the NFL, there's been less than 20 minority head coaches. And if you look at how many of them got a second chance, right? Hugh Jackson is one of them who's been a head coach twice. Mm-hmm. But he's like, I'm the exception to the rule. There are so few and far between who get that second chance. So to your point, it's you get this chance and you have to win. It's almost like, remember the Titans, right? When Denzel is like, I have to win. We have to be perfect, because if we're not, we don't get another chance. We don't get another tomorrow. And so again, when we throw out these numbers, do you know, and I was asked this question 2 weeks ago, and I did not know this. Do you know that the NFL has a diversity and inclusion report that has come out every year since 2013 that's public?
Yeah, well, I think it's tied to the Rooney Rule, I believe, right?
Yes, it's public, and you can go Google it and find it. And since 2013, so Coach brought it to my attention, and I started reading every report, and they're long. So I'm a few years in. I'm not to 2019 yet. But every year since 2013, it's, hey, we have a problem. Hey, we're not hiring enough. We're not doing enough coordinators. There's not enough minority head coaches, not enough, obviously GMs. And they go down this list and they're like, hey, we need to fix this. And in every report, there's quotes from Roger Goodell and others saying, yep, look, it's really important. We need to make an effort. We need to make an effort. We need to make an effort. But no one's making an effort. It's all like, it's literally just talk. So the responsibility falls on everybody. We've talked about, players, speaking out. I brought up I Am Athlete earlier. Those guys are talking about it now. But the players that are current need to also do that. Do you think that's something, you're around a lot of players, is it something that they talk about, or is it, hey, I got a job to do, right? Not to say I'm looking out for me, but I got my contract to figure out. I got my play to work. I got to work out. I got to know my playbook. Is that something that's talked about openly? Is it, something that is in the forefront of people's minds, or is it just, hey, every offseason we talk about it, but we just never do anything about it?
Yeah, well, so I think the first thing I say to answer your question directly is, I think we're at a space now where guys can get micro-educated on it in a couple of quick seconds and understand either a take they want to have on it or where they stand on it, without having to dig in and be a part of the Players Association, or even have to be vocal. Because to your point, every player has a platform, can get put over at Central Market or Whole Foods, grocery store, by peers or colleagues, or somebody who's quote unquote the media. So I think everyone now has to be somewhat more aware of these major talking points. And I feel like because of that, guys are a little bit more educated, so they can tell you how they feel about, the same way they can tell you how they feel about PEDs and performance enhancing drugs. I have a take on that. I think this is something that guys would have a take on, which is healthy. The second thing is, something you said earlier was, we have a responsibility to bring this awareness. It's when you think about it, it's the same reason why you ask yourself, does Flint, Michigan have clean water yet? And the answer is still no. And it's like, well, wait, how could it? It's been all these years, and it's like, well, yeah, it's not in constant conversation. So to your point, we have to have these conversations frequently like this, and regardless of where you sit on it, where your take is, just think about what we're saying. The last thing I say is I had a chance to spend right about a year ago a few moments with Coach Herm Edwards, and we talked about the fact that yes, he had the shot that coach, they talk about coaching, he had it twice, right? And so kind of that point, but also he was unapologetically vocal when he had his platform on ESPN, and that's a big part of why he keeps a very deep, diverse roster of coaches on his coaching roster at Arizona State.
Yeah. It was one of the ones we talked about yesterday too, was the few opportunities that are for minority head coaches, right? We talked about, well, when you look at Bruce Arians, his 4 main coordinators are all minorities. They're in the Super Bowl. And he wasn't knocking Mike Tomlin, but if you look at the Steelers, where the Rooney Rule started, right? That's where it started. Now, he's only had 6 offensive and defensive coordinators in all the years Mike Tomlin's been there. He's never had one minority coordinator. A lot of positional coaches, but never one. And that was one where I was like, well, if you're a minority head coach, it's Coach Jackson felt like, and I know I'm speaking on his behalf because he's not here, but he's like, look, if you're a minority head coach, it's your responsibility to bring in minority coordinators to give them opportunities, because the moving of the goalposts is something that we talk about a lot, where, hey, if you want to be a head coach, you need to be a coordinator, you need to be successful, you need to be, on a great team and, prove your worth. And then you get an opportunity. But then you see guys like Eric Bieniemy, who, what more does he have to do? And he's not a head coach. And then you see guys who have gotten head coaching jobs who've been, coordinators for 5 minutes, never called a play before in certain cases. And again, we're not knocking them or saying they're not deserving. But if you were to just look at them and say, well, hold on, how come you're not seeing that jump from, QB coach to, someone who's not a play caller to head coach for minorities, but you're seeing it for, let's be honest with it, a white coach, you're seeing that all the time, right? Why is that? And I don't know that we know the answer to why is that, but that's something we need to address, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you why I think it is. I think that the NFL is driven by dollars, and the same way that domestic abuse over the years, physical fitness in Play 60, cancer awareness. I mean, all of these things, right? So almost every year, every other year, there is a banner social platform, from Black Lives Matter to the social so there's a banner every couple of years and a flag that flies. And I think until we get that flag up on the pole and it flies, it's going to continue to be under the radar. And so if the BLM movement is able to pivot from social justice into an internal reflection of the league and organizations, that's when change is going to happen. And until then, it's going to continue to be under the radar thing. And if you look at, I guess the other piece to it is, being a minority is, has its own challenges. And I think that it gets very easy to segment and segregate within the struggle of being oppressed or being a minority. So, the other side to this is, the micro transitions that of women in the NFL are making. And I say micro because over the years, like we've moved 1/10 of an inch. Now in the last 5 years, yes, we've moved a lot, but there's still so much more to go. And really, truth be told, I think that flag is flying a little higher than the person of color, the black, the black OC or coordinator or a coach. But the truth is, both banners should be flying together. Like both groups need more representation.
Yeah, no, listen, that's one of the main reasons we do this show is every week is to keep it in front of people and keep talking about it. And some people, I've had just as many people unfollow me as follow me because they realize, like, this is something that's not going away. It's not, we talked about it 1 week and we're done. Like, we talk football, finance, and social awareness. That's literally kind of the mantra of the show, is every week we're gonna bring something up, right? And I'm gonna leave you kind of with this question. I'm trying to think of the right way to kind of ask it, because you kind of brought up a good point where the gender equality, it has been something we talked about, right? Whether it was the Olympic soccer team, the WNBA players saying, hey, same pay for same value, and there's kind of arguments back and forth there. I'm a big proponent that Becky Hammon should be a head coach in the NBA, but that's a whole nother conversation. But how do you feel that is more acceptable? Because again, we try to be very open on and transparent here, yet I'm still trying to pick my words correctly. Gender, right? We're less afraid of women, and as a whole, not everybody, as a whole, white America is scared of Black men, right? Like, why? Like, why? Not even why, but do you feel that that's part of why it's been a slower process?
Yeah, and again, I will take my shot at why. But the reason I think it's a slower process is, if you hire one woman, then you've made, again, a great impact, right? So it's almost like the kid. It's easy to go from an F to a D. All you need to do is turn in one paper, and your
Right.
59 is now a 74, right? But it's a little harder to go from a B to a C, let alone a B to an A. And so there is so much, because there is more traction in the hiring of Black people, hiring of color. It takes more to actually make a substantial impact or change. Versus, I literally saw a stat on ESPN, and every year there's been one female hire, and they're like, look at the progress, and it's like, yes, it's 5 people over 5 years. That's not great progress, but it's deeper impact. And so I think that's it's the sword that hurts the least, right? Because it's the least deep. The other sword, the other arm, is much deeper, and it has to get addressed. And so, that's what I say there. As far as the fearing of the Black man. So I think within our culture, and I think within sports, and really within the NFL and NBA, I think it's really a twofold thing. And so, number one, we understand that Black people make up 12% of the U.S. population. That's just is what it is, right? And so when you look at the disproportionate representation within these sports leagues and sports organizations, I don't know that you have to always have equal color in policing a community, right? So, like, Asian people don't have to only police Asian people. I'm not saying that. So I'm not saying that 70 to 80% of the league has to be, run or executives or front office by Black people and people of color. What I'm saying is the same way that I believe in education, there are beautiful children and beautiful minds in every single community, whether you're in the ghettos, whether you're in the slums, whether you're in condos, whether you're in mansions. There's intelligence dropped in every single one of those kids' minds. It's the same thing as adults. It's the same thing as coaches. And so, what it comes to is, are you willing to give the opportunity? And, to Coach's point, the guys saw some of those, and Hermit was saying the same thing. It is within us as a fraternity to make sure that you're successful. I was speaking with Alonzo Highsmith, he's a Hall of Fame player, for the Oilers and played for Miami. His daughter and I are very good friends. And one of the conversations that she and I were having was, how do we get your dad and a handful of others, the Coach Jacksons, for example? I think they work together in Cleveland. But how do we get these guys to the Rick Smiths, just to create an infrastructure of resource and support that is in addition to the resources and support and onboarding that the NFL provides, right? To make sure that guys are successful as they possibly can. Because what it turns into is, like for me, one of the first in my family to go to college, like, you have to make it for us. And so there is this very deep feeling of, we just want everybody to be successful.
The last is a big philosophical question. And it's one that we pose to all our guests on the show, because we were having a conversation. We had two really guests on, Dr. Tommy Shavers and Adam Mendler. And as we were talking, I forget which one of us kind of brought it up. We said, look, in every empire, there has been slavery. You look back in history, always it's built on the backs of free labor. Whatever. Now it's slavery. People want to call it free labor. It's slavery. However, in all of those empires, what happens is when the slaves are finally freed, or they finally kind of put, stop, and they, just make a stand, the empire crumbles and the people disperse from that area. And it has happened historically everywhere. In the US, it's the first time in history where there was slavery. It was stopped. Argue when and where and how, and if it's, there's obviously still oppression and other things that are going, it's systematic racism that's happening. But as far as slavery goes, it's done. But the empire hasn't fallen. What they're trying to do is now something that's never been done in history, which is integrate and make it work. And it's never been done. Do you think, living in Houston, understanding kind of a lot of this stuff, do you feel that it's something that America can do? Because you see it, right? There's a fight. There's people who don't want to change. And then there's people who do want to change. And doing something that's never been done in the history of the world, do you think it's something that Americans can do in your lifetime?
Yes. So here's why I say that.
I like how quick you answered too, by the way. I just want to say, I like how quickly. Yes, I love that. It's fantastic.
I took some time to think about it. I did. As a history buff, I've never connected those dots, but you're absolutely right. Going back to biblical times, like that is a very astute point. The reason I say yes is, and you talk about finance, I think we had a chance to speak on or off the record about capitalism and finance before, but I'm one of those guys who enjoys learning. I think that the word curious has taken a deviant turn in our vernacular. I'm a very curious person. So over COVID, I actually read The Wealth of Nations, like all 5 books, and The Wealth of Nations is written by Adam Smith. It is the thesis that the current economic American and European economic systems are based upon, right? And I'm saying that with this point of reference. Capitalism is so strong, it's stronger now than it's ever been. So the idea of wealth accumulation being a zero-sum game is no longer true, right? And so you think about like our, I guess, grandparents, when, J.D. Rockefeller was around, they had like absolutely zero chance of obtaining generational wealth. Where you look at our parents maybe had a sliver of a slice, we actually have a shot. Like it's something that's attainable for us because of the, integration of technology and, just the way currency works today versus, it used to be so much more static. So the reason I say yes is it's easier to become a millionaire now than it's ever been before. And so, with that being said, I think that commerce can be the great equalizer. And as much as people may oppress and people may hate, very few people hate green. And so as long as we can continue to create green and green opportunities, green is so to me, music, sports, and money are the one thing that, that kills racism, that kills hate, because everyone enjoys all 3 of them so much.
Well, we're going to end it on that because I like that it's a yes, because obviously I'd love to see it. I love the way you put it. Curious, I blame the monkey. George gave it, right? That's the problem. We all think it's a bad thing, but no, curiosity is fantastic. And we should all be more curious, because if we start asking more questions and finding more out about each other, it gives you a better understanding of people. So I'm 100% with you on curiosity. I really appreciate you coming in on such short notice and helping me out today. This has been the Coach and AK Experience. This has been the Coach and AK Experience, part of the Sports Fluent Network.